Hey, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name's Dyl, and today we have a discussion to have because what is going on in Best Actress? We got our nominations last Tuesday, and to me, pretty solid lineup. I mean, we have Cate Blanchett, Michelle Yeoh, most people's number one or number two. I was a big fan of Ana de Armas and Blonde. I know that's a controversial take, but Michelle Williams in The Fabelmans, very beloved movie role, yeah. And then we had a surprise at the fifth slot because I was predicting a Davis snub for Woman King, but I was also predicting Danielle Deadweiler to get in for Till because I just love that performance and it's so impactful. But neither of them got in. Andrea Riseborough surprised us all with To Leslie. But in retrospect, was it really a surprise? All the pieces were there. If you saw our reaction video, we both flipped out. Like, what is going on? And Matt, you've had some days to think about it.
Yeah.
What are your overall thoughts now, a few days later?
So let's unpack this. I think in order to really get into what happened, we have to talk about what happened. So, To Leslie is a film that premiered at South by Southwest to rave reviews. It's from a very small distributor, Momentum Films. The film was released in October, again, to rave reviews. This is a film I first heard about because it had like an 85, 86 on Metacritic, and I was like, wow, that's something to take note of. But you know what? I'm not too captured by this. Maybe I'll watch it eventually. I added it to my watch list, didn't think too much of it. And then Andrea Riseborough got the Indie Spirit nomination. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I started seeing comments being like, wow, Andrea Riseborough, don't overlook her. She's amazing in this film. Go and watch To Leslie if you get a chance. That's where I first really heard about it. And I moved the film on my watch list from my bottom tier of watch it when you get a chance to, you should probably watch this. So I downloaded the film and I still haven't seen the movie. I'm going to watch it tomorrow. And I will come back and tell you all my reaction to it.
Me too.
I didn't take it seriously as an Oscar thing until about 2 weeks ago when the thing started happening, the thing that you all know about, where everyone started posting on social media. To Leslie is a small film with a giant heart with one of the best performances of all time. It seems like Kate and Michelle and Danielle and Viola all have their spots secured. Make sure you go and vote for Andrea Riseborough. That's where the controversy starts, is that you've got a bunch of actors copy and pasting the same thing. Were they paid to do this? Was it some weird organic grassroots campaign? Was Andrea Riseborough blackmailing everyone? No, she was not. I assure you of that. But ultimately, the controversy all comes from how is it that in 2 weeks, because it started on the day that Oscar voting opened up, and it continued through the week that it was open. So how did we go from no one knowing what To Leslie was to suddenly being an Oscar nominee in 2 weeks? And the questions I have to ask here are less about does Andrea Riseborough deserve it, and more what are the implications on the Oscar race going forward? First off, will this change voting forever? I don't think so. I don't think this is going to change campaigning because here's the thing. If everyone was doing this, it would be the same as no one doing it. The reason why Riseborough really drew attention is because no one else was doing this. No one else was calling all their famous friends to post for them. No one did that. If people were posting like that about 10 different nominees, then none of them would get the traction. The reason it worked is because Andrea Riseborough was the only one who took that specific tactic. And it caught hold because everyone was talking about it. Ultimately, if everyone does that, it's totally the same as no one doing it because no one will gain traction because instead of having Ed Norton, Cate Blanchett, Amy Adams, so on and so forth, celebrities posting about it, if you had each celebrity posting about someone different, then no one catches on. No one at all catches on. In snubbing the two black actresses in this category, Danielle Deadweiler and Viola Davis, this demonstrates that there is a lot of whiteness that is upheld in this organization. And it's not saying that people who voted for Riseborough were specifically trying to make a racist action, nor do I believe that it fully was a racist action at all. I don't think that at all. I think that Andrea Riseborough had a great performance, but ultimately you see the impact of white privilege running through this, which is that just look at the connections that Andrea Riseborough has as a zero-time nominee. How many films has she been in with other actors who have immense status? Pretty much all the people that she posted about. But I'm just going to pull up her IMDb page and let's look at some of the movie stars that she is friends with. She was in Amsterdam alongside Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Rami Malek, Anya Taylor-Joy. She was in The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne alongside Benedict Cumberbatch. Even back to Mandy, Nicolas Cage. The Death of Stalin with so many actors. Battle of the Sexes with Steve Carell, Emma Stone. Nocturnal Animals, Amy Adams, Jake Gyllenhaal, Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Birdman, Michael Keaton, Emma Stone. Oh my god, Edward Norton. So many big names. Zach Galifianakis, Naomi Watts. All these big names. Needless to say, Andrea Riseborough has a ton of famous friends, has connections, and has those kind of inroads to the Academy. So, Danielle Deadwyler. Who has Danielle Deadwyler worked with in Hollywood that could impact a nomination? And the answer to that is basically just Regina King in Watchmen. And ultimately, that just comes down to Danielle Deadwyler doesn't have the connections to do something like this. And when people are like, I'm going to vote for my friend, they're going to vote for their friend. And oftentimes, that friend who they're going to be voting for, that's impacted by the system of Hollywood upholding a lot of white privilege. So ultimately, was it a racist decision to nominate Andrea Riseborough over these two black actresses? I don't think so. However, you can't deny that there is not white privilege that went into that series of events.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with a lot what you said there. I guess looking at it from another angle, not discrediting or not disagreeing with anything you said, just looking at it more from a campaign type angle from a very much invested lover of the Oscar season. I mentioned on this show many times, Woman King's a movie I would love to see do well across the board. Picture, director, actress, costumes, this, that. But Sony really didn't campaign this movie. No. Like, yeah, Viola Davis did actors on actors, and Gina Prince-Bythewood was out there a little bit, but there wasn't huge industry screens for this movie like some other movies had. Like, this was Sony's only real movie. You'd feel like, hey, let's get people in the room. Like, you mentioned Cate Blanchett, Tar. Tar had a lot of big movies premieres with people, like the one Scorsese was at, where he's like raving about the movie. I didn't see any of that for Woman King. And I mean, if they did do one and I just didn't see it, I guess it wasn't that big because we didn't see many posts or many stuff about it. Then for Till, you mentioned many times how much you love Women Talking, and we saw how much Women Talking struggled this season due to its subject matter, and Till definitely suffered from that as well. I helped set up a community screening of Till in the area where I live at, and we had a very hard time finding people to want to go to this movie because various people from different backgrounds said, hey, this is a story about people from our past that we just do not want to see because it's going to be exploitative. It's going to be taking advantage. It's going to be overtly sad. It's going to be negative. And I love this movie. Deadwyler would be my second or third on my rank of best actresses from every movie, not just Oscar-contending movies. She's amazing in this movie. I love her performance. It's so powerful. It's so moving. But clearly, this is something that people just didn't really want to see. And that's not to take away from Deadwyler. It's not to take away from Davis. But these are both performances that did not have a huge campaign behind them. Like, yeah, Viola Davis hit most precursors, but also they were clear signs for this is going to struggle at the Oscars. It was a September movie. September movies very much struggle at the Oscars. Sony wasn't really putting much weight behind this. It was on the downward trajectory in a lot of categories. I was just predicting it for just one nomination. Ended up getting blanked. And then for Deadwyler, she missed some major stuff on the path. She missed Golden Globe, which was major. She did get in at SAG. She got in at BAFTA. Very good for her. But as I mentioned before, this movie was having very bad visibility issues. Not to mention MGM UA. They've been pretty bad at campaigning recently. We saw Women Talking, a movie that most people had at number 1, 2, or 3 all season. Only ended up getting 2 nominations at the Oscars for Adapted Screenplay and Best Picture. So both these actors had big showy roles that a lot of people were expecting to get in, but there were signs for it to miss, and not discrediting them or anything like that. The vision was there. It's not like these were like the number 1 and 2 and they just got left off. That's just the point I want to bring up for the campaigning, because it does look very bad that the 2 black actresses miss in favor for a white actress. So I'm not here saying like, oh, they deserved to miss or they should have made it or anything like that. I'm just looking at like the bigger picture, being like, hey, we have these prior details. Let's bring this in, because as you mentioned before, Danielle Deadwyler can't go out there and do this. Viola Davis, she probably could, but why would she? She's a big enough actress.
Yeah.
She shouldn't. You shouldn't have to do that. And overall, this just reads to like the 2 Leslie team, as I mentioned before. They either really know what they're doing, or they broke the rules. That's how it looks to me. I don't think this is a sign of we're just snubbing the black actresses to put in this white actress, because in this category we have our first Asian lead to be nominated, and then we have Ana de Armas, who is not a white person, so we do have some diversity here. So it's not like, oh, we're only voting white people. But at the same time, I do hear the concerns, do hear the woes about, hey, Davis missed, Deadwyler missed, and this movie that not many people have heard about got in.
One thing I'll say is that ultimately, yes, Viola Davis could have done that, because Viola Davis does have a ton of friends in Hollywood. The list I read for Riseborough would be twice as long for Viola Davis. But the point that I want to make in terms of whiteness in the Academy is not that Viola Davis could not have done that. It's that there are only 4 black women that have ever been nominated twice for an Oscar. So when we talk about a list of people with famous friends that can make an impact, there are so many more white nominees at the Oscars than there are black nominees, and frankly, there are a lot of films. There are a lot of films that still treat black actors as tokens in the films, which means that a lot of incredible performers get looked over. And so ultimately, when we see something like this, you need to keep in mind that someone like Danielle Deadwyler, no matter how amazing the performance is, a lot of these voters vote for their friends. We see that over and over with Diane Warren, and someone like Danielle Deadwyler does not have the connections in the industry yet in order to get that. And a lot of that is mostly just it's due to white privilege. So with that being said, did they break the rules? And I don't know specifically what they did, but what I do know is what has happened in the past. So in 1996, the film Shine, which stars Jeffrey Rush, and which I would say is not a good film, it was nominated for Best Picture. It won Best Actor. And something that they did is they hired political campaigners, and they had these campaigners make literal house calls to people. They had them call up the voter list of Oscar voters and go, "Hi there, have you decided who you're voting for yet? Well, make sure that you keep in mind Shine, starring Jeffrey Rush." So they did that. After that, the Oscars banned this type of campaigning, which is specifically targeting voters and saying to them, hey, you need to vote for this film. Right? Which I'm going to say I don't see much of a difference between that and Diane Warren sending out like fancy sheet music that's signed by her being like, hey, vote for me. I don't see much of a difference between that and Nomadland sending out a bunch of food to people and being like, hey, vote for us. But they made the rule, and it's pushed a lot all over the place. And then after that, more rules were put in place after the Weinstein campaign for Shakespeare in Love, in which a large part of the Shakespeare in Love campaign was putting down Saving Private Ryan, was talking about how you can't vote for the other films, vote for this instead. And so now there's a rule that when you're campaigning for a film, you can't put down the other films. People do it anyways, but they do it through very subtle tactics, very smear tactics. They plant stories in newspapers or whatever, in the trades. But a big question here is, was To Leslie's posts, were those specifically telling people, don't vote for Kate, don't vote for Danielle, don't vote for Viola, vote instead for Andrea? That's a question. There were some posts where people said that. Is that breaking the rules? Yes, it is. But is that the campaign, or is that those voters specifically? AKA, is To Leslie behind it, or is that Frances Fisher? And then furthermore, in 2014, this is the last time, I believe, that a nomination was rescinded. And this nomination was for a song called Alone Yet Not Alone from a similarly small movie, Alone Yet Not Alone. It's like a weird Christian movie. The song is really not great. And the song got nominated. And then the nomination got taken back. And the reason that the nomination got taken back was because the guy who wrote the song was the former head of the music branch of the Academy. And so a lot of people owed him favors, and he basically went from place to place sending out messages saying, hey there, just want to let you know I have a song in the race and you owe me one, so please vote for it. And that crossed a line, and that's why it got rescinded. So the question here is, what did the To Leslie team do? Did they simply email people and say, hey, could you share this, please? Is that against the rules? Probably, because it's saying, hi there, you have sway. Can you please post this exact post on your Twitter? Did they do that? Or was it actually grassroots? Did they send it to one person and then people kind of copied it and got the ball rolling? Was it genuinely grassroots? Or were they specifically telling people, hey there, I know you're friends with Andrea Riseborough. Wouldn't it be great to see her get a nomination? Post this.
Yeah. No, I fully echo what you said there. Ultimately, what it comes down to me is that whole, which one was it? Was it the more natural campaign route, or was it bribes or favors or what various things? Because as you mentioned, she has a lot of connections, and this movie had a little bit of buzz, but it wasn't to the level of a Woman King. It wasn't to the level of a Till, and even using a white nominee who was in the running, it wasn't to the level of a Babylon or an Empire of Light with Margot Robbie, Olivia Colman, who was also like in that little mix of like they're probably not in, but maybe they are. So like there was, in my eyes, I know we talked about this before, and people who are coming in who may not be very well versed in the Oscars of how it was going, Blanchett and Yeoh, for their respective films of Tar and Everything Everywhere All at Once, seemed like the definite locks. I know the posts were saying that, there's 4 locks. Like, no, there was 2 locks. Everyone else was up in the air. Michelle Williams seemed in for the Fabelmans, but there was room for misses. She missed BAFTA. She missed
that
SAG.
was shaky after BAFTA and SAG. Very shaky.
Yeah, but still, I thought the Oscars, they love Spielberg. They're not going to snub Spielberg's mom. She's going to get in somewhere. Just, is it lead? Is it supporting? And then, to me, I know I was kind of on a ledge with this, but I was there all season. Ana de Armas seemed pretty surely in for Blonde. Actors love her. Her co-stars love her. Kind of what people are saying about Andrea Riseborough now, of like, oh, everyone loves her. Like, yeah, they do, but not to the level of Ana de Armas. Like, you even see someone during their awards acceptance speech of Colin Farrell take time out to be like, hey, I loved you in your movie. To me, that showed sign, hey, there's passion. Even if the movie's hated, she's liked. There's your 4. 5th slot, that's what's open. Woman King seems, but also huge decline. Its package wasn't there. Till, the performance makes sense. It had the backing, but it's a movie that people didn't watch. Like, yes, I know it got an A or an A+ cinema score. People who did see it loved it, including myself. But getting people to see it was the issue. So if there's stuff like that, where Till could show up number 1 or number 2 on some ballots, but also is non-existent. Woman King could show up, but it may be 5 on those ballots. They do a rank scale for the acting ballots. To Leslie, could show up on half the ballots, but if it's half at number 1, because of people seeing these posts like, oh, we have to put her at 1, that gets a skewing edge. Like, maybe overall, Danielle Deadwyler had more votes than Riseborough, but Riseborough had the higher sliding scale.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say before we end this, I just feel really bad for Andrea Riseborough for being at the center of this controversy, because ultimately, this controversy is not talking at all about whether she deserved a nomination. It's not talking at all about whether her performance was good. It's entirely centered around she did something bad. And I don't think that this is her fault, no matter what it is. I think that this is the fault of many different institutions and a lot of systemic prejudice. And that should not reflect on Andrea Riseborough herself. She was not trying to exploit those prejudices. She was not trying anything. Her reaction was genuine surprise from what I read, that she didn't expect to be nominated. I think that she's innocent there. So I'm just going to say I feel really bad that she's embroiled at the center of something that it really doesn't seem she had a whole lot to do with.
On top of that, I also feel bad for Davis and Deadwyler as well. Obviously, they missed the nomination, but also all this extra stuff thrown on top of it's like salt in the wound. Like, hey, you missed, but guess what? You should have made it in, and it was cheating. Like I don't know. To me, I feel bad for Violet because like going forward, she's probably going to be asked questions for her next big movie. She's like, "Oh, so what do you think about this?" And like, she's going to have to answer. Like, you can't really answer that because you're going to sound.
The answer
like
is
me.
They did a great job, and it was an honor to be nominated the rest of the season. Right?
Yeah.
I feel more bad for Danielle Deadwyler, who this was truly a role that it's still going to kickstart a career. But this could have been a moment where we had a new legend born, basically, where no one knew who she was a year ago, and now here she is.
But for everyone out there, definitely let us know what you thought about all of this Best Actress fiasco going on right now. Whether it's something that you read outside of here or heard outside of here that you want to bring to the conversation, or just stuff you want to comment on throughout.
Maybe you just want to
maybe
call
we
us
said
both
something
idiots.
throughout.
But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. My name is Matt.
And my name's Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.